Hello, and welcome to the Package Monthly Think Big, where we talk about issues that are a little further out on the horizon and some ideas that will help us to get there. We have a bunch of things on the agenda today. I'm going to pull up the first one. I have the first one. So Dan and I were talking yesterday a bit about the idea of wanting to focus the team on maybe one initiative for a milestone and see how that works. And it's feeling like we have Ugo joining, who's not yet on this call, but maybe he might not be invited if someone could ping him and just send him the invite.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Oh, thanks. And David has been just crushing those cleanup policies and making awesome progress on the scalability and performance and rolling them out for historical projects. And we've been making a bunch of sort of core improvements to the dependency proxy over the past couple of months. We've been resolving bugs, we've been encountering and uncovering new bugs. And given the importance of the dependency proxy, both in terms of what we're hearing from customers now, from the existing functionality of wanting it to work with Docker Hub, to wanting to expand it to work generically with any container registry, and then of course the future desire to have it work with the package registry and really support virtual registries. It also came up a bunch during the issue about how to grow the team, about where does the dependency proxy live? Does it make sense to split the product into a container image proxy and a package proxy? So maybe it makes sense to de-risk some of that work in general and focus on that for a given milestone or beyond. So I thought it would be helpful so I tried to plan 14.3, mainly focused on this effort. I'm gonna pull up that milestone plan and share my screen in a secure place. Okay. So yeah, I was thinking that this could be a good idea, and I'm looking forward to all of your feedback. Okay, so for the container, I didn't think that there's any way we're going to get around the registry development and deployment work. I know Haley and Joam, that's going to be taking up our time through the end of next year. But I thought we might be able to make time for moving the dependency proxy to Workhorse, which requires some Workhorse work and also some Rails work. We also, during our most recent, actually Steve uncovered that the dependency proxy is throwing some controller errors, which is contributing to our error budget. So this might be another good one to tackle because it's currently like almost 90% of our error budget is the dependency proxy. Also be very helpful if we had user level data and we were counting this towards our monthly active users. The dependency proxy is pulling over 1 million images per week. And we're not getting any credit for that for our user data at GitLab. So I think that would be very helpful. As we look to expand the product, and when you consider that we're downloading 1 million images per week, I think it makes sense to start to add in this job that clears the cache automatically before we get into a similar situation as with the container registry where we have petabytes of data. And then something that we've kind of punted on for a while, but I think it would be great to start considering the user interface for this. So creating a GraphQL query for the dependency proxy that could return a list of images and manifest information would be really helpful. And we could start to present that information to users in the user interface. That will definitely help too as we start to expand, make it work more generically. And then I was talking to Sid recently, and he was asking about the dependency firewall. And I've kind of been thinking about the dependency firewall mainly focused on virtual registries and pulling in packages from, let's say, NPM. But I suppose we could do the same thing with images pulled from Docker Hub, and we could add a simple rule that says don't ever pull images that have Red Hat in the name, for instance, or where the author name has changed in a given time. So this issue was actually opened by a customer recently, and it suggests that we basically just have a list of allow and deny patterns. And I thought that this would also be a good idea. So I'll pause there and stop sharing and just ask, what do you think of this idea of focusing our efforts towards one initiative or one set of initiatives as a team? And what do you think of the dependency proxy as that focus? And third, what do you think of those issues?
Sophia had a comment in the document, and I don't know if that's where we're up to though.
Yes, so she says that we are starting this the first layer of dependency proxy tests in this milestone, but she does imagine that this work will continue to ensure that into future milestones. And then David, I think you had the next comment.
Yeah. So first, I'm totally fine in my tunnel with cleanup policies. Yeah, my question was, seeing the milestone review issue, they were all about the dependency proxy for container images. Should we extend the scope of this to the dependency proxy for packages? And I think we already have some ideas like changing the current implementation into a real proxy so that we can easily add caching.
I love that idea. Yeah, like we have a whole set of issues, and we have for NPM, for instance, where we would turn it into a proxy, and then when we would store the data and then cache the data, and then before you know it, we have a proper proxy of the public registry. I would definitely support that, and I think we can probably, yeah, I could add those issues as well.
I would want to maybe consider though, with the migration to Workhorse, I'd be curious, like in my view, I feel like maybe that should happen before we start to add more and more, because or at least like thinking about it, it seems like the kind of thing where if we add more now, like with different packages and start refactoring, whenever we do change to Workhorse, that might end up being more work on top of what we already have. Whereas if we switch over to Workhorse now, then we don't have to worry about it in the future as much. I might be overthinking that though.
Can we do both at the same time? Can we keep this set of issues that I just shared and then also pull in the first issue for turning the NPM request forwarding into a proxy instead of just a request forward?
I'm not familiar with what the first issue is, so I don't know. I mean, yeah, we probably could. There's probably some overlapping work that could happen before it gets to the, how does the upload occur?
What do you think, Joam and Haley, about, do you think that you would have time to maybe help out with some of the Workhorse implementation for getting the proxies switched?
I think we're a bit busy. We could probably help with the Go stuff, but when it comes to Workhorse, it's a completely different application with its own logic. So it would require probably more time than what we have right now. But if the intention is to give some Go support in terms of syntax and reviewing that kind of stuff, yeah, for sure. I think we can help.
That makes sense. And Steve or David, have either of you worked on Workhorse before? Or is this something we may need to try and recruit help from outside of the package group? Because the moving into Workhorse is a infra-dev issue as well. So we might be able to bubble it up and get some help from outside our team.
The modifications we did for the file uploads, part of them were in Workhorse. So I guess we are familiar with the ping pongs between Workhorse and Rails. The thing is that for this part, we need to create a custom logic on top of that. So that I might need a bit of time to investigate, or perhaps external help. But it's not like we don't know a thing about Workhorse.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it depends on, like how big of a factor time is on this. We can probably, become more familiar and take the time to figure out how to implement that. But it might take longer than if we got one of the Workhorse maintainers to jump on it for us. So it kind of depends on that time factor, or if we want to gain the experience of becoming more familiar with Workhorse and doing it ourselves.
I think one of the differences is that this is not about uploads. This is about downloads. So it's the reverse. So I'm not sure if that logic already exists in Workhorse or not, but at least for package, it seems like this is new, a new unexplored area.
Yeah, it is new.
Yeah, it's basically we need to apply what Workhorse does for uploads. We need to apply that in a GET request. And on top of that, we need to have a custom logic that will tell Workhorse, hey, you need to download data from this source and upload it there. And this is, I don't think it exists in Workhorse.
Yeah, so it seems like there are some foundational changes and architecture discussions to have. So probably certainly something that would be good to involve one or two maintainers from Workhorse.
We've had questions for a while about someone in GitLab owning Workhorse, and we use it a lot. So one of the reasons why we've been sort of more involved than maybe other groups is for that reason. So something to think about, whether Workhorse could end up as a product category living in the container, in the one of the package stage teams that we end up with. So that's part of the reason why I think this might be an interesting point to do that. I'm not sure which team that might live in. Kind of makes sense to be in the package registry team, given that's where the overlap is, but something else to consider while we're thinking about this idea, I think.
And Dan, sounds like we may need help from some of the Workhorse maintainers, and I'll reply to that issue, but I'll CC you, and any help you can get in rallying the troops would be helpful too. Okay, well, if that's, let me follow up on that and see also about pulling the NPM. Sorry, Ellie, were you gonna?
Yeah, I don't want to volunteer this person, but I think Jaime might be someone to ask about this. He might be able to work, like have some good development time that he can spend on this.
He's on the release team, right?
He could be.
Yeah, release team.
Okay, yeah, it's just perfect.
And then the other aspect is, for the most part, the Workhorse work needs to be done in order for the Rails work to be done. So it might make more sense to schedule those in separate milestones.
Okay. And so, yeah, like now back to Dave, we come full circle back to David's point. Does it make sense to focus on maybe starting to add the NPM functionality, or should we wait until, should everything basically be gated behind making it work with Workhorse, switching it to Workhorse?
I would just like to see some cache eviction and expiration policies done before adding any more features, because with any additional features comes additional data, and we might soon find ourselves in the same situation that we are right now with the container registry. and we're still on time to avoid that. So the sooner we do that, the best.
Yeah, so we can still, I'll just pull up the screen again. So we could still prioritize. We can't do the, well, maybe we could do the workhorse portion. I'll follow up on that. The Rails portion will need to move back a milestone, even from wherever this work is done. But we can investigate the controller errors. We can add the user level data. We can prioritize removing artifacts that are older than 90 days. And we can also potentially add a GraphQL query, or would that be, would you consider that part of the new features, Joan, that you would be hesitant to add? Because that's not adding new data, right? That would just be, or would it be?
Okay. Can you repeat what feature?
The creating a GraphQL query for the dependency proxy, so returning some of the image and manifest data.
No, I think that doesn't qualify as a problem. Basically, I see a problem for everything that will add more data or different kinds of data to the dependency proxy storage.
Okay.
Do we have any performance concerns around pulling out those info from the dependency proxy? It's true that they are in the models, but if they are super linked, we may need to consider performance is there.
Okay. Well, I like it. I'll follow up on the workhorse portion, and I'll try to keep this milestone focused on the dependency proxy and see what we could fit in. I like the idea of having one central theme for the P1 issues for a milestone and see how that goes. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things there that I chatted with Sam about it, and Sam was mentioning that he's worked in other places where like that swarming thing can be really good for the whole team to be working together on one thing. And that's kind of what was in my head as well, of like, let's all focus on the same thing together if possible. I'm not dismissing your points, Jerome, on the work you have going on, that you and Haley have going on with the container registry, which is super high priority as well. But being able to all work together is kind of a cool thing. So if we can make that happen in a way that makes sense, that's kind of my main motivation. Just to break up the way we're working a bit, get everyone together on the same goal is kind of the intent there. So if there are other options that you might want to suggest, I'm happy to look at those too. Go ahead, Joe, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. In the end, it's just a matter of priorities. So if it is the priority is getting this done as a team all together, then I'm fine with it.
I like the swarming idea a lot. I think it would be fun to do that. It would really like invoke some additional collaboration where it's not just like I get a MR to review and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know we were working on that.
I agree. Cool. The next thing, and I was hoping, David, that we could just talk quickly about pipelines for packages. So quick background for everyone. If you haven't seen the demo and issue and discussion, we talked about this last month in our Think Big. The idea is to use package updates as a trigger for pipelines, because right now pipelines are focused only on the repository. So if you want to run a package-specific pipeline, you have to go through and install the package, and there's a lot of extra lines you have to add to your pipeline. And since then, we've done some competitive research and seen that GitHub Actions supports this package updates as a trigger, as well as AWS pipelines, whatever they call that product, I forget. And so we invited Dov to kind of hear about this and talk about next steps. Originally, we were thinking that problem validation would make sense, where we would go and talk to customers and say, is this a problem? We've kind of heard from customers that this is needed, and seeing the competitive research, it's maybe a little more clear. So I was wondering, I was thinking that it makes sense to move more to like solution validation, to be able to show customers a specific idea and say like, this is what we have. How would you and kind of get feedback on the solution versus the problem. It's a lot of product manager words. I apologize for all those at once. Anyway, David, I know you were talking to folks on the pipeline authoring team, and I was wondering if you had any follow-up items or anything you wanted to add to that.
Not yet. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. So I will report back in the issue with whatever we discuss. And it will be recorded.
Okay, cool. Would it be helpful if I was a fly on the wall in that meeting, or would it be helpful?
I can invite you if you want to attend.
Okay. I think really what we want to get to is like, what could be an MVC of this that we could deliver? Because I think that will be the most valuable thing that we could shop around to customers. I've been, during my customer conversations, just kind of gently probing about it. And it seems like people are instantly just kind of, yes. And I had a Twitter poll, and my huge Twitter audience of 100 users, we had 100% were saying that this functionality would be useful. So I think we're zooming in on something, and really having an MVC proposal would be really valuable for taking the next step.
Yeah, I'm thinking into something super basic where when you push a package, you have a pipeline, and the jobs on this pipeline will simply pull the package archive, and then it's the job configuration. You do whatever you want with that file. Although we might want to start with specific package types first, because not all the package types have archives or files. For example, Composer is a Git tag. It's not an archive. So let's leave that problem to a side and focus on package types that have archives, such as NPM or Maven.
I would vote for starting with NPM or Maven, whichever one is easier from a technical perspective. From a data point of view, like NPM is the most popular in terms of pulls, but Maven does see the most pushes. So if we were going to focus on one event when a package is published, we'd probably see the most events for Maven, even though NPM is.
And I mean, I think the other thing to consider there is we have some pretty large customers who use both NPM and Maven, who we could consider reaching out to discuss how they might want to use it, whether it's valuable for them. I know some of those customers, not mentioning any names because I think there's online, I'm like, some of those customers have been really keen to work with us on some future sort of development efforts. So it might be a cool opportunity to partner with a large customer. So something else to consider with both of those.
Yeah, I have good relationships with probably 5 large enterprise customers that would be interested in testing this out and would definitely give us some feedback. So I think once we kind of zoom in on the MVC, we'll have a good way to like interact and verify that it works.
Maybe it's too early to ask this question, but maybe have you thought about how the user needs to define it or configure the pipeline to be triggered? I mean, is it the same user that defined the pipeline? Is the one that you need that user to define the pipeline if it will be triggered because of a package change, or those are different users? There's 2 questions. So how users define it, and if those are like the same users that are defining pipelines?
My initial idea was to have a specific YAML config file for those pipelines. In the demo, I took a shortcut. I used the regular YAML file, and I used that for the package pipelines. But I don't see a point of mixing both configurations, because those both configurations between the pipelines for Git repositories or Git pushes and pipelines for packages, those are different jobs. It doesn't make sense to mix everything up in in a same file. As for the user, that's a good question.
Yeah, I could answer that. I think that it depends on the organization. At a small, mid-sized customer, it's probably the same person setting it up. It's probably a developer or DevOps engineer, but at a large enterprise, it's much more likely to be sort of the center of excellence team that's maintaining this list of packages and the package registry for a set of groups underneath them. But it's still going to be a DevOps engineer. It's still going to be so yeah, it's still going to be whoever's used to writing pipelines. It's just their concern might be more focused on the registry.
Cool. David, can you maybe elaborate a bit more about why you think those are like separate location where you need to configure it?
Yeah, so the jobs I used to demonstrate this feature, they were totally different from the usual jobs we have currently. And the thing is that even for the runner, I had to make some modifications because when the runner picks up the job for the package pipeline, it doesn't have to pull a Git repository, it has to pull a package file. So it's really different. And it's like the starting conditions for the job is different. In the pipelines for packages, it's really the package file. And in the standard pipelines, it's the Git repository at whatever commit SHA it's targeted. And to me, it looks like it seems that they are really different, but I'm kind of new in the world of pipelines, so I'm I'm all ears in suggestions.
And there's functionality that people would want, like they want to know when a package is updated, they want to scan basically their entire package registry or container registry when there's an update, or they want to, when a new version is updated, they want to delete any old versions, for example. So there's a lot of stuff where they may not want to run their entire development pipeline or pull a repository. They may just want to run something against their package registry, for instance. Another thing that, David, you mentioned before is that this doesn't just have to work for packages in using GitLab's registry. This would also work for packages that are hosted outside of GitLab as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. The main event is a package that is pushed in the package registry, in the GitLab package registry, but it's not necessary that we have the source code for that or the build info for that package, because the package could come from a project within GitLab, or it could come from an external tool, or even manually. You can just pull up a terminal or console and just build your package and push it to the GitLab package registry. And that's the start for the pipeline, well, the pipeline creation.
Cool, thanks.
Any other questions, or we can move on to the next item?
What are the next steps here?
It seems like David has a meeting tomorrow with a developer on the pipeline authoring side, and they're going to talk through a potential MVC. Once we have that MVC, we'll try and that'll be something that we can validate with customers. So going to that, I mentioned we have several customers that have expressed interest in this. So going to them and kind of reviewing the proposal and seeing if it makes sense and fits their needs. And then from there, scheduling an issue and seeing if we could build something.
Okay. Sweet. Okay, that works for me. Thank you. Sorry to space there.
Do you have anything to add?
No, David, can you please add me as well to the meeting as a fly on the wall?
I will.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the next item I had, let me open up this Epic. So one thing that we've seen a lot of issues for is basically, we've had one data model for the package registry for a while. Let's just share my screen again. And I've collected a bunch of issues in one Epic that are all related to the users don't have the data that they want. So I just thought I'd share this as kind of a reference and see if it sparked any ideas or any discussion. There's a bunch of issues here. How many? A lot. So everything from combining like names in the same view of the registry, having more analytics. Sorry, just getting distracted. Yeah, maybe I'm not ready to talk about this one. I'm sorry. But yeah, we want to have there's a whole bunch of things that are related to metadata, making sure it shows up in the user interface, making sure it's available for the packages. So I just wanted to bring this up and say that this will probably be a major focus for us in the coming months. And we have an issue scheduled for 14.2, for example, to bring in more NPM metadata. We'll need to do the same thing for each of the package manager formats. So a lot of the work and then making sure that that shows up in the API and just making, there's a bunch of other things like that. Not really a best discussion item, I realize, as I'm talking through it. I thought it would be more helpful. Sorry, everyone. Epic fail. Nico, you're going to save me?
Yeah, and I wanted to ask if in that Epic we are including so I think there is a model refactor that is due, which is kind of big, but maybe David has more info about that. I know because I discussed it with him. Sorry, David, to put you on the spot.
Doing two things at the same time, that's not a great idea. A model refactor.
Yeah, to split the package on several models instead of one giant blob, which is becoming.
I would say that those are two different aspects. So the model splitting thing is quite complex one and would be a lengthy task to complete. So the idea for those following us, currently we do have a number of models in the Rails backend, and those models get updated and we throw more code inside of them for each package type we add, for each support, for each additional package type support we add. And this is slowly becoming like what I call giant bags of everything. And this is not great. So we have this idea of splitting this and organize the code more cleanly. And yeah, I think it's really two different things between splitting the models and having a proper backup for the package features.
Thanks.
When you say backup, you mean basically that, like, adding the package registry to the rake tasks so you could back up the entire registry, or something else?
Yeah, I think that's the expected thing. We would need to back up all the packages.
That's something I hear probably 2 to 3 times a month, I would say, from customers. They always say, talking to large enterprise customers, and they ask about, well, what about backing up the registry? We can't do that now. So not every day, not every week, but it does come up often, and we haven't really scheduled anything like that.
My only concern here is that it's not only data that we have in the database, it's also data that we have in object storage. So what happens with this if we want to back up that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, because we're talking about potentially terabytes of data for each for large customers.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Maven packages. They use a special package that is without a version, and that package has a single file that keeps uploaded each time we upload a new version. So you can end up with thousands and thousands of files, and could take a bit of storage on object storage. So how can we back up that? I think we need a bit of an investigation here on how the backup rake task works and what we can do with it.
Does GU have replication support for packages already? Because if they have, they must already have some kind of logic to copy package data from one place to another.
Yeah, it is baked in the models directly. So we don't do anything special about it. It's directly supported.
Okay.
I do. So what I heard there was an investigation issue, Tim, that we need to get rolling at some point before we can go forward there.
Yeah, I have that to follow up on. Probably schedule it a bit further out, but yeah, something to follow up on. And with regards to the metadata, just for that comes along with the packages, we'll try and schedule that bit by bit as we move forward, starting with NPM. And then we also have issues for Helm that's scheduled, extracting the metadata and presenting it. So we'll work through each format at a time. Okay, there was one more item on the agenda that I'm going to pause the recording for because I'm just going to do a quick demo, but feel free to stick around.